Close your eyes for a moment and picture this. You're standing on a beach at night, and the ocean stretches out before you, endless and dark. You can hear the waves, but you can't see where they end. That feeling in your chest, that mixture of smallness and wonder, that's exactly what the universe wants you to feel right now. Not scared, not insignificant, but connected to something so vast, so ancient, so impossibly beautiful, that your worries about tomorrow's meeting or yesterday's argument start to feel like a single grain of sand on that infinite shore. I'm here tonight to share 100 facts about the universe that will quiet your mind, slow your breathing, and remind you that you're part of something extraordinary. And the first fact might be the most important one you'll ever hear. You were made of stardust. I know you've probably heard that before, but stay with me because most people don't understand what that actually means. Every atom in your body, every single piece of you was forged in the heart of a dying star billions of years ago. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen you're breathing right now, none of it existed when the universe began. Stars had to live entire lifetimes, burning for millions of years, then explode in spectacular supernovas, scattering their elements across space, just so you could exist. You are not just in the universe. You are the universe experiencing itself. When you look up at the night sky, you're not looking at something separate from you. You're looking at your ancestors, your origins, your family. And that's fact number one. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. Think about that number for a moment. 13.8 billion. Your entire life, every human civilization, every pyramid, every empire, every word ever spoken, all of it fits into a slice of time so thin it's almost invisible compared to the age of everything. The universe has been expanding, creating, destroying, and recreating itself for longer than our minds can truly comprehend. And yet, here you are, alive right now, in this particular moment. What are the odds? What are the chances that all those billions of years of cosmic evolution would lead precisely to you, reading these words, breathing this breath? Space is not empty. I need you to understand this because it changes everything. When you look up at the night sky and see the darkness between stars, you're not seeing nothing. You're seeing something we call dark matter and dark energy, mysterious forces that make up 95% of everything that exists. We can't see them, we can't touch them, but we know they're there because of how they affect everything around them, just like love, just like gravity, just like the invisible threads that connect you to every person you've ever met. The universe is teaching us that the most important things are often invisible. There are more stars in the universe than grains of sand on all of Earth's beaches. Let that settle into your mind for a moment. Every beach you've ever walked on, every shore, every desert, every handful of sand, multiply all of that, and it still doesn't come close to the number of stars burning in space right now. Scientists estimate there are around 1 septillion stars. That's a 1 followed by 24 zeros. And many of those stars have planets. And many of those planets might have oceans, mountains, storms, maybe even someone looking up at their night sky wondering if they're alone. You are never truly alone. This is fact number 5, and I want you to hold on to it. At this very moment, you are hurtling through space at 670 million miles per hour. That's how fast our galaxy is moving through the universe. You're on a planet spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, orbiting a star at 67,000 miles per hour, in a solar system racing around the galactic center at 490,000 miles per hour. You are in constant, incredible motion, even when you're sitting perfectly still. The universe is carrying you, always has been, always will be. Light is slow compared to the universe. This sounds wrong, doesn't it? Light is the fastest thing we know. It travels at 186,000 miles per second. Nothing can move faster. And yet, the universe is so vast that light from distant stars takes billions of years to reach your eyes. When you look at the night sky, you're not seeing the present, you're seeing the past. That star might not even exist anymore, but its light continues traveling. A messenger from history, a ghost made of photons. You are literally looking back in time every time you gaze upward. The universe has no center. This confused scientists for centuries. We kept trying to find the middle, the point where everything began. But here's what we discovered. The Big Bang didn't happen at a single point in space. It happened everywhere, all at once. Space itself was created in that moment, expanding outward in all directions simultaneously. Which means every point in the universe is the center. You are at the center. I am at the center. The edge of the observable universe is the same distance from you as it is from a galaxy 13 billion light-years away. This is the universe's way of saying everyone matters equally. Your body is a universe unto itself. You contain roughly 37 trillion cells. Each cell contains atoms. Each atom is mostly empty space with a tiny nucleus and electrons buzzing around it. If you removed all the empty space from all the atoms and all the humans on Earth, we would all fit into a sugar cube. You are, quite literally, made of almost nothing. And yet you think, you feel, you love, you dream. You are organized stardust that became conscious enough to wonder about itself. That might be the most miraculous fact in this entire list. There are planets made of diamond. In the constellation Cancer, there's a planet called 55 Cancri, where scientists believe the surface is covered in graphite and diamonds. An entire world where the most precious gem on Earth is just common rock. The universe has no concept of value the way we do. It creates beauty not for profit or status, but simply because it can. Diamonds fall from the sky on Jupiter and Saturn. The universe is abundant beyond measure. It always has been. Black holes are not holes. They're the opposite. They're the densest objects in the universe, places where so much matter has been compressed into such a small space that not even light can escape. Imagine taking all the mass of a star 10 times bigger than our sun and crushing it down into a point smaller than a city. The gravity becomes so intense it bends space and time itself. If you could somehow survive falling into a black hole, time would slow down for you while the rest of the universe aged billions of years in what felt like moments to you. You would watch the end of everything while barely aging at all. The universe is expanding faster now than it ever has before. This wasn't supposed to happen. Scientists thought gravity would eventually slow down the expansion, maybe even reverse it. But in the late 1990s, we discovered something shocking. The expansion is accelerating. Something we call dark energy is pushing everything apart at an increasing rate. Billions of years from now, galaxies will be so far apart that beings living in the future will look up at their night sky and see only darkness. They'll have no idea other galaxies exist. They'll think their galaxy is the entire universe. We are living in a unique era where we can still see the cosmic web, the beautiful structure of everything. We are lucky. You are younger than you think. Time moves differently depending on gravity and speed. Einstein proved this. If you've ever been on the top floor of a building, time moved slightly faster for you than for someone on the ground floor. The difference is tiny, measured in nanoseconds, but it's real. Astronauts on the International Space Station age slightly slower than people on Earth. Not by much, but measurably. The stronger the gravity, the slower time moves. On the surface of a black hole, time essentially stops. The universe is teaching us that time is not the rigid thing we think it is. It's flexible, relative, personal. There are more possible iterations of a deck of cards than atoms on Earth. If you shuffle a deck of cards, the order you create has likely never existed before in history and will never exist again. The number of possible combinations is 8 times 10 to the 67th power. That's more than the number of stars in the universe, more than atoms on Earth. This means every time you shuffle a deck, you're creating something genuinely unique, something that has never been and will never be again. You do this casually, without thinking. Uniqueness is not rare. It's everywhere. You are one of those unique combinations, a pattern of atoms and experiences and thoughts that has never existed before and never will again. The sun is not yellow. I know this sounds wrong. You've seen it. It's yellow, right? Actually, the sun emits all colors of light equally, which combines to create white light. It only appears yellow or orange to us because Earth's atmosphere scatters blue light, making the sky blue and the sun appear more yellow by contrast. In space, astronauts see the sun as brilliant white. This is a reminder that everything we perceive is filtered through our particular perspective. Two beings can look at the same object and see completely different things, and both can be right. Truth is often more complex than it appears. We are all time travelers. Every single one of us is moving forward through time at a rate of 1 second per second. You cannot stop this journey. You can't pause it or rewind it. You can only experience it, moment by moment, breath by breath. And here's the beautiful part. You get to choose what you do with these moments. The universe has given you this extraordinary gift, this forward momentum through existence, and you have more power over your experience than you realize. You can't control time, but you can control your attention, and attention is everything. The Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies are going to collide. In about 4.5 billion years, our galaxy and our nearest large galactic neighbor will merge. It sounds catastrophic, but it will be one of the most beautiful events imaginable. The two galaxies will dance around each other for millions of years, their spiral arms intertwining, stars scattered like seeds, new solar systems forming from the chaos. And here's the amazing part. Even though billions of stars will be involved, the chances of any two stars actually colliding is almost zero. Space is so vast that entire galaxies can merge, and stars just slip past each other like strangers in a cosmic crowd. This collision will create something new, something neither galaxy could have been alone. Sometimes destruction is just transformation wearing a scary mask. You have never touched anything in your entire life. This seems impossible, but it's true. When you think you're touching something, what you're actually feeling is the electromagnetic force between the electrons in your atoms and the electrons in the object's atoms. Those electrons repel each other, and your brain interprets that repulsion as touch. At the atomic level, there's always a tiny gap. You've never actually made contact with another person. You've never touched the ground. You're always hovering, always floating, held up by invisible forces. We live in a universe of illusions that feel absolutely real. The universe might be infinite. We don't know. We can only see about 46 billion light years in any direction. That's the edge of the observable universe, the limit of how far light has been able to travel since the Big Bang. But beyond that, we have no idea. The universe might go on forever, or it might curve back on itself like the surface of a sphere. There might be regions of space so far away that their light will never reach us. Entire cosmic empires of galaxies and wonders we'll never see. Or there might be an edge, a place where space simply ends. We don't know, and the not knowing is part of the mystery. Silence doesn't exist in space. Sound needs a medium to travel through, air or water or solid matter. Space is a vacuum, nearly empty, so sound waves have nothing to vibrate through. If the sun exploded right now, we wouldn't hear it. We'd see it 8 minutes later when the light reached us, but we'd never hear it. In space, no one can hear you scream. This absolute silence might sound terrifying, but there's something peaceful about it too. The universe operates in silence. Stars are born silently. Galaxies collide without a sound. All that magnificent violence in creation happens in perfect quiet. The great attractor is pulling us towards something. There's a gravitational anomaly in space, something with a mass of tens of thousands of galaxies, and it's pulling our galaxy toward it at about 1.4 million miles per hour. We can't see what it is because it's hidden behind the plane of the Milky Way, but we can measure its effect. Something massive is out there calling to us, and we've been falling toward it for billions of years. We won't reach it for a long, long time. But doesn't it make you wonder what's out there in the dark, patiently waiting? Neutron stars are terrifying and beautiful. When a massive star dies, its core can collapse into a neutron star, an object so dense that a teaspoon of its material would weigh about 1 billion tons. These stars spin incredibly fast, sometimes hundreds of times per second, and they have magnetic fields trillions of times stronger than Earth's. If you got within 1,000 miles of one, the magnetic field would disrupt the atoms in your body. You'd simply cease to exist as matter. But neutron stars don't just sit there passively waiting to destroy you. Some of them hunt, enter pulsars. These are neutron stars that emit beams of radiation from their magnetic poles. As the star spins, these beams sweep through space like a cosmic lighthouse. And if Earth happens to be in the path of that beam, we detect regular pulses of radiation. Some pulsars are so precise that they rival atomic clocks. We're talking about objects that have been crushed to the density of an atomic nucleus, spinning hundreds of times per second, keeping time more accurately than anything we've ever built. Think about that precision for a moment. A ball of neutrons 20 kilometers wide, spinning at a significant fraction of the speed of light, and it doesn't wobble. It doesn't slow down irregularly. It just keeps going tick, tick, tick like the universe's most terrifying metronome. And then there are magnetars. If neutron stars are nightmares, magnetars are the universe showing off. These are neutron stars with magnetic fields 1,000 times stronger than typical neutron stars. A magnetar's magnetic field is so intense that it warps the very shape of atoms. If a magnetar existed just halfway between Earth and the Moon, it would wipe every credit card, hard drive, and electronic device on the planet. Just sitting there, doing nothing, it would destroy our technological civilization. In 2004, a magnetar called SGR 1018-620 had what's called a starquake. The crust of the star shifted by less than a millimeter. just a millimeter. That tiny adjustment released more energy in 1/10 of a second than our sun produces in 150,000 years. The burst of gamma rays hit Earth from 50,000 light-years away and measurably affected our planet's ionosphere. Let me repeat that. A star cracked its knuckles 50,000 light-years away, and we felt it here. If that doesn't humble you, consider this. The energy from that single crack could power every electrical device on Earth for the next 100,000 years. Not a year, not a century. 100,000 years. And it was just the star stretching. Now here's where it gets truly unsettling. Scientists detected over 100 smaller aftershocks following that initial quake. The star was literally ringing like a bell made of matter so dense that a sugar cube-sized piece weighs as much as Mount Everest, a bell that sang in frequencies we can detect across half the galaxy. But starquakes aren't even the most violent thing neutron stars can do. Sometimes two of these cosmic nightmares orbit each other. They spiral inward over millions of years, moving faster and faster, warping space-time around them so severely that they send ripples across the entire universe. And then, in the final milliseconds before they collide, they're orbiting each other hundreds of times per second. Mountains of neutronium whipping around at a significant fraction of light speed. When they finally merge, the collision creates what's called a kilonova. In 3 seconds, that explosion produces more gold, platinum, and uranium than exists in thousands of solar systems combined. Every gold ring, every platinum necklace, every uranium atom on Earth was forged in these apocalyptic collisions billions of years ago, then scattered across space to eventually become part of our world. You're wearing the shrapnel of dead stars. Think about that. In 2017, we detected 2 neutron stars colliding 130 million light-years away. The gravitational waves reached us first, followed by gamma rays, X-rays, and visible light. For the first time in history, we watched the universe forge its heaviest elements in real time. We saw the cosmic foundry at work. That single event answered questions we've been asking for decades. Where does gold come from? Neutron star collisions. Where does platinum originate? Same answer. Those mysterious rapid radio bursts we've been detecting. Many of them trace back to magnetas and neutron stars. But here's what keeps astronomers up at night. There are an estimated 1 billion neutron stars in our galaxy alone. 1 billion neutron stars. Think about that for a second. 1 billion objects, each one capable of warping space-time, shooting jets of radiation, and potentially ending life on nearby planets. And that's just in the Milky Way. There are an estimated 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. The scale is almost incomprehensible. But here's what makes it even more unsettling. We've only detected about 3,000 of them. That means we're blind to 97,000 neutron stars in our own cosmic neighborhood. We don't know where most of them are. We don't know which ones are magnetars. We don't know which ones are pointed at us. It's like living in a city where you know there are 1 billion snipers hidden on rooftops, but you can only see 3,000 of them. The others? They're out there, watching, waiting, and occasionally one pulls the trigger. This is the reality of our universe. We're not living in some stable, predictable cosmic environment. We're navigating a minefield of stellar corpses, each one a loaded weapon with the power to sterilize planets. And the worst part? Most of these neutron stars are invisible to us until they do something dramatic. They don't emit much visible light. They're small, dark, and scattered across vast distances. We only find them when they pulse like lighthouses, or when they flare up like magnetars, or when they collide with something else. The universe has littered our galaxy with time bombs, and we can't even see most of them. Now, before you start thinking this is just theoretical danger, something that sounds scary but never actually happens, let me remind you, Earth has been hit before. We have evidence. Geological records show radiation signatures that match what we'd expect from nearby stellar events. Ancient ice cores contain isotopes that shouldn't be there unless something bombarded our planet with high-energy particles. Some scientists believe that mass extinction events, disruptions in Earth's ozone layer, and even climate shifts might be linked to cosmic radiation events. We're not just talking about dinosaurs and asteroids here. We're talking about invisible waves of destruction that can reach across light years to fundamentally alter the chemistry of our atmosphere. And here's where it gets really eerie. There's evidence suggesting that a gamma-ray burst or supernova might have been responsible for the Ordovician extinction event around 450 million years ago. This was one of the biggest die-offs in Earth's history, wiping out nearly 85% of marine species. For years, scientists scratched their heads trying to figure out what could cause such widespread devastation. Then they started looking up. The theory goes like this: a massive burst of cosmic radiation stripped away a significant portion of Earth's ozone layer. Without that protective shield, ultraviolet radiation from our own sun suddenly became lethal. Imagine the oceans teeming with life, suddenly exposed to radiation levels that essentially sterilized the upper layers of water. Plankton died. The food chain collapsed. And life on Earth had to rebuild itself from the survivors who happened to be deep enough, or lucky enough to make it through. What haunts me about this is the randomness of it all. These creatures didn't do anything wrong. They weren't poorly adapted or weak. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time on a cosmic scale. A star they never saw, in a galaxy they couldn't perceive, exploded thousands of years before they were even born, and the consequence finally arrived to end their entire world. We like to think we're insulated from the universe, that Earth is this safe bubble floating through space, but the truth is, we're completely exposed. Our atmosphere is thin, our magnetic field is strong but not invincible, and we're traveling through a cosmic shooting gallery where the bullets move at the speed of light. And the most terrifying part, we might not even see it coming. Light and gamma rays travel at the same speed, which means the first light we see from a nearby supernova would arrive at the exact same moment as the deadly radiation. There would be no warning, no time to prepare, just a new star appearing in the sky, brighter than anything you've ever seen, and in that same instant, the invisible destruction begins. The truly horrifying part is how this scenario plays with our sense of security. We've built our entire civilization on the assumption that the universe follows certain rules, that cause precedes effect, that we have time to react to danger. But a supernova strips away these comforting illusions. It's already happened. The light is already traveling toward us, and we won't know until it's literally in our faces. Think about what this means on a cosmic scale. Right now, at this very moment, there could be dozens of stars in our galaxy in their final death throes. Some of them might have already exploded thousands of years ago, and their light is racing toward us through the darkness. We look up at the night sky and see stars as they were centuries ago, millennia ago, blissfully unaware that some of those pinpoints of light no longer exist. We're essentially looking at ghosts, cosmic tombstones marking where something used to be. And here's where it gets even more unsettling. Scientists have identified several stars that are prime candidates for going supernova relatively soon, in cosmic terms. Betelgeuse, the red giant forming one shoulder of the Orion constellation, has been acting strangely. It's been dimming and brightening erratically, swelling and contracting in ways that suggest it might be approaching the end. When Betelgeuse goes supernova, and it almost certainly will within the next 100,000 years, possibly much sooner, it will briefly outshine the entire galaxy. For weeks, maybe months, we'll have two suns in our sky. Now Betelgeuse is about 640 light-years away, far enough that it won't kill us, but close enough to be spectacular and mildly concerning. The radiation will still reach us, but at that distance, it will be diluted enough that our atmosphere should handle it. Should, probably. We think, but imagine being an alien civilization on a planet just 100 light-years from Betelgeuse. You'd have no idea your world was already doomed. Because light takes time to travel, they're living in a cosmic illusion. Right now, they might be building cities, launching their own telescopes into space, dreaming of a future among the stars. They might be celebrating festivals under Betelgeuse's red glow, writing poetry about its beauty, telling stories to their children about the eternal giant in their sky. But that star, already gone, already exploded. The supernova's light is hurtling toward them at 186,000 miles per second, and they have absolutely no way to prepare, no evacuation plan, no bunkers deep enough, no technology advanced enough to save them. One night, without warning, their sky would ignite. Betelgeuse would appear to explode in real time from their perspective, blazing with the intensity of 100 million suns. In an instant, their planet would be bathed in radiation levels that make our worst nuclear disasters look like a flashlight beam. The gamma rays would strip away their atmosphere in hours. The heat would boil their oceans. Every living thing on the daylight side would be incinerated before they even understood what was happening. And the cruelest part, they would die watching the light from an event that happened a century before they were even born. That's the universe's most haunting magic trick. We don't see space as it is. We see space as it was. Every star in the night sky is a ghost, a memory, a postcard from the past. The farther away something is, the older the image we're receiving. When you look at Andromeda, our neighboring galaxy, you're seeing it as it appeared 2.5 million years ago, when our ancestors were just learning to use stone tools. We are time travelers by default, not by choice, not by technology, but by the simple fact of existence in this universe. Every observation is an archaeology. Every glance upward is a museum visit, and the museum gets older the farther you walk through its halls. But here's where it gets unsettling. We talk about the speed of light like it's fast, and it is. Nothing moves faster. But on cosmic scales, light is glacially, painfully slow. It takes light 8 minutes to reach us from the sun. 8 minutes. Which means if the sun suddenly vanished right now, we wouldn't know for 8 minutes. We'd keep living, keep talking, keep scrolling through our phones under a sun that no longer exists. The sun could explode. The Earth could keep orbiting a ghost for 8 blissful, ignorant minutes before the darkness hit. Now scale that up. The nearest star system, Alpha Centauri, is over 4 light years away. If someone there was watching Earth right now through an impossibly powerful telescope, they wouldn't see you. They'd see Earth as it was in 2021. They'd see a planet still in the grip of a pandemic. They'd see a version of you that no longer exists. You are always your own fossil to someone far enough away, and it gets stranger. Because light doesn't just travel, it stretches. The universe is expanding, and as it expands, the light traveling through it stretches too. This is called redshift. Light from distant galaxies gets pulled like taffy, shifting toward the red end of the spectrum. The farther away something is, the faster it's moving away from us, and the more stretched, the more ancient its light becomes. There are galaxies so far away that by the time their light reaches us, they've already moved beyond what's called the cosmic horizon. They're so distant now that even if we left today, traveling at the speed of light, we would never reach them. The universe is expanding faster than light can cross it, which means there are places in the universe we will never see, never visit, never know. Not because of technology, not because of time, but because the universe itself has pulled up the drawbridge. The stars we see in the night sky, many of them aren't even there anymore. Their light is so old that by the time it reaches your eyes, the star itself may have already died. You're looking at ghosts, cosmic obituaries written in photons. And here's the truly haunting part. Future civilizations will see even less than we do. The accelerating expansion means that eventually, distant galaxies will recede from us faster than the speed of light, not because they're moving through space that fast, but because space itself is stretching. They'll vanish beyond a cosmic horizon we can never cross. Imagine being an astronomer 1 trillion years from now. You look up and all you see is your own galaxy, a lonely island in an ocean of nothing, no distant galaxies, no cosmic microwave background, no evidence that the Big Bang ever happened. Your entire observable universe would fit in a space we currently see as a tiny neighborhood. You'd have no way to discover the true nature of the cosmos. You'd measure everything perfectly, calculate everything correctly, and still arrive at completely wrong conclusions about reality. Not because you're stupid, but because the evidence has been erased by time itself. We are incredibly, almost impossibly lucky. We live in a narrow window where the universe is old enough to develop complex life, but young enough that we can still see its history written in the sky. A few billion years earlier, and the cosmic microwave background would have been too hot, the galaxies too chaotic. A few trillion years later, and we'd be living in what looks like a static, eternal, isolated galaxy with no clue that anything else ever existed. We're reading the universe's autobiography before the pages crumble to dust. And most haunting of all, we're probably the only ones who will ever read these particular chapters. Because by the time the next civilization capable of asking these questions emerges, if they ever do, the book will have rewritten itself. The evidence will point to a completely different story. That's the real weight of the Silurian hypothesis, not just that we might miss evidence of ancient civilizations, but that Earth itself is designed to erase the past. The planet doesn't preserve history, it recycles it. Think about what that means for our own legacy. Every monument we build, every city we construct, every achievement we're so proud of, it's all temporary graffiti on a surface that's constantly being wiped clean. The pyramids of Giza, which feel eternal to us, are barely a blink in geological time. Give them a few million years without maintenance, and they'll be dust. Maybe interesting dust, chemically distinct dust, but essentially indistinguishable from the background noise of Earth's rock record. And here's where it gets personal. We spend so much energy thinking about our legacy, about what we'll leave behind, about how we'll be remembered. We build museums to preserve our history, archives to document our present, monuments to project our importance into the future. But all of that assumes a continuous chain of remembering that someone will be there to read the signs, to interpret the artifacts, to care about what came before. The Silurian hypothesis suggests that assumption might be laughably optimistic, not because civilizations will necessarily destroy themselves, though that's possible, but because Earth simply doesn't care about preserving the details. The planet operates on scales where even nuclear waste becomes just another layer in the sediment, where entire mountain ranges rise and erode away like waves on a beach. It's humbling in the most profound sense. We're not writing our story in permanent ink. We're writing it in sand, just above the tide line, and the tide is always coming in. It's always been coming in. And yet, and this is crucial, we're still here asking these questions. We're still searching for answers, even though we know how incomplete the picture might be. That persistence, that insistence on meaning might be the most human thing about us. We're the species that looks at a silent universe and demands conversation. We see patterns where there might be none. We find faces in clouds, messages in coincidences, and purpose in chaos. Some call it delusion. I call it hope dressed in different clothes. And maybe that's exactly what we need right now. Because here's something we rarely talk about. The Fermi paradox isn't just an intellectual puzzle. It's an emotional weight. When you really sit with it, when you let yourself feel the full scope of that cosmic silence, it can be crushing. We're surrounded by this vast, indifferent universe that seems to have no interest in whether we exist or not. But flip that coin. The same conditions that make the paradox so unsettling also make our existence extraordinary. Every human achievement, every act of kindness, every song ever written, every child's laugh, it all happened here, on this tiny stage, without any cosmic audience demanding it. We did it anyway. We built cathedrals knowing they'd crumble. We write poetry knowing it might never be read. We love people we'll eventually lose. We create meaning in a universe that didn't come with an instruction manual. That's not despite the Fermi paradox. That's the answer to it. Maybe intelligence doesn't spread across galaxies because it doesn't need to. Maybe the rarest thing in the universe isn't life or intelligence, it's a consciousness that can recognize its own improbability and choose gratitude instead of despair. We keep looking up because we're wired to search, but while we're scanning the skies for signals, we're missing the most important broadcast of all, the one happening right here. Every conversation you have, every problem you solve, every moment you choose connection over isolation. You're not just living your life, you're answering the universe's silence with evidence that consciousness can care, can create, can find meaning in the void. You are the universe looking back at itself with wonder, and that wonder that's not a small thing. That's not trivial. In a cosmos defined by entropy and expansion, consciousness is the only force that works in reverse. Stars scatter light, galaxies drift apart, but your mind pulls meaning from chaos, creates order from randomness, builds cathedrals of thought from the dust of experience. Think about love for a moment, not the greeting card version, the real thing. The inexplicable pull toward another consciousness, the irrational decision to tie your happiness to someone else's existence. From a purely survival perspective, it's inefficient. It makes you vulnerable. It divides your resources. And yet every culture, every civilization, every isolated tribe that has ever existed has built its foundation on this supposedly irrational force. Why? Because love is consciousness recognizing itself in another. It's the universe's loneliness trying to solve itself through connection. When you look into someone's eyes and feel that recognition, that's not just brain chemistry, though, it is that too. It's matter achieving something matter shouldn't be able to do. It's the cosmos briefly overcoming its own isolation. And here's what destroys me every time I think about it. We almost didn't make it. Our species came within a few thousand individuals of extinction. There was a bottleneck in our history where the entire future of human consciousness hung by the thread of one small population, probably in Africa, probably struggling against climate change and predators and disease. Every symphony that would ever be written, every equation that would ever be solved, every act of kindness between strangers, every laugh shared between friends, all of it nearly blinked out before it began. The universe came that close to losing its only known conversation partner. But we made it. Against odds that should have erased us, we survived. And then we did something even more improbable: we thrived. We spread across every continent. We adapted to every climate. We built civilizations in deserts and jungles and frozen tundras. We learned to preserve food, to predict seasons, to navigate by stars. Knowledge that once took a lifetime to acquire could now be passed down in an afternoon. A grandmother teaching her grandchild which berries were safe to eat was performing an act of data transfer more sophisticated than anything else on the planet. And here's where it gets fascinating. Language didn't just help us survive. It changed what survival meant. Because once you can talk about tomorrow, you start planning for it. Once you can talk about next year, you start planting crops. Once you can talk about what happens after you die, you start building monuments, writing books, creating art that outlives your body. We became the only species that lives partially in the future. A beaver builds a dam for winter. Impressive. But we build cathedrals that won't be finished for 100 years. We plant trees whose shade we'll never sit under. We write messages to civilizations that don't exist yet. Language made us time travelers, and it made us question everything. Because the same tool that lets you say the food is in the cave also lets you say, what if the food wasn't in the cave? The same brain that can plan can also doubt, that can hope, that can despair. No other animal lies awake at night wondering if they're good enough. No other species creates philosophy, writes poetry, asks why. The gift of language came with a cursed self-awareness so complete it borders on painful. But we kept talking anyway. We had to, because isolation is the one thing language can't cure but desperately tries to. Every conversation is an attempt to prove we're not alone inside our heads. Every story we tell is a bridge thrown across the void between your consciousness and mine. And those bridges held civilization together. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. What if those bridges are burning? We're living through something unprecedented. For the first time in human history, we have infinite access to information and nearly zero shared interpretation of it. You and I can look at the same photograph, the same data set, the same video footage, and walk away with completely incompatible versions of reality. This isn't just political polarization. This is something deeper. This is epistemological fracture. You know what epistemology is? It's the study of how we know what we know. And right now, we don't even agree on that anymore. Your uncle gets his truth from cable news. Your coworker gets hers from podcasts. Your neighbor gets his from whoever has the most followers. And you? You're probably cobbling together your version of reality from 17 different sources, none of which talk to each other. We've shattered the town square into a million echo chambers, each with its own physics, its own moral code, its own heroes and villains. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night. Language is breaking down under the weight of this. Words used to be our shared tools. We could disagree about what to build, but at least we agreed on what a hammer was. Now, we can't even agree on definitions anymore. You say freedom, I hear something completely different. You say justice, and half the room nods while the other half reaches for their phones to tweet their outrage. You say patriotism or progress or family values, and you might as well be speaking in tongues. Every word has become a Rorschach test. We project our entire worldview onto these symbols and then act shocked when nobody else sees what we see. And social media, oh man. Social media took language, this tool we spent 50,000 years perfecting for nuance and connection, and optimized it for rage and engagement. We're not having conversations anymore. We're performing. Every tweet is an audition. Every post is a signal flare to our tribe. I'm one of the good ones. I believe the right things. Please don't exile me. The algorithm doesn't reward understanding. It rewards certainty, outrage, tribal loyalty. And so we chase the dopamine hit of righteousness instead of the slow, uncomfortable work of actually understanding each other. Here's what's fascinating. The algorithms don't care if you're left or right, conservative or progressive. They care if you're engaged, angry, clicking, sharing. Because that's what keeps you on the platform. That's what generates revenue. We think we're choosing our media diet, but the truth is, the media diet is choosing us. It's feeding us exactly what will keep us hungry for more, while making sure we never feel satisfied enough to stop consuming. And this brings us to something crucial, the erosion of nuance. Because when we're trapped in these echo chambers, when we're constantly fed content that confirms what we already believe, something dangerous happens. We lose the ability to hold two conflicting ideas in our heads at the same time. Everything becomes binary, black or white, right or wrong, with us or against us. But reality is messy. It's complicated. It's full of contradictions and grey areas and situations where good people disagree for legitimate reasons. Take almost any major issue: immigration, climate policy, healthcare, education reform. These are incredibly complex problems with no perfect solutions. They require us to balance competing values, to make difficult trade-offs, to acknowledge that reasonable people can look at the same facts and reach different conclusions. But in our current media landscape, that complexity gets flattened. Every issue gets reduced to a simple narrative that fits neatly into our tribal identity. You're either for immigration or you're a xenophobe. You either believe every aspect of climate activism or you're a science denier. There's no room for, I agree with the goal, but I'm not sure about this particular policy approach. We've lost the ability to say that's a good point, but have you considered, without it being interpreted as betrayal, as weakness, as proof that you're not really on the team? And here's what makes it even more insidious: this isn't just happening at the extremes anymore. It's metastasized into the center, into everyday conversations, into workplaces and dinner tables and group chats. You see it in how people test each other. Those seemingly innocent questions that are actually loyalty checks. Someone mentions a news story, and the way they frame it, the specific words they choose, the tone they use, it's a probe. They're figuring out which tribe you belong to before they decide how to respond. And you feel it, don't you? That split-second calculation you make before you speak. That internal algorithm running in your brain. How will this be interpreted? Will this mark me as other? Can I afford the social consequences of saying what I actually think? We've all become diplomatic negotiators in our own lives, carefully navigating conversational minefields that didn't exist a decade ago. I was talking to a teacher recently who told me she can't discuss historical events the way she used to. Not because the facts have changed, but because every single topic has been weaponized. The students come in already tribalized, already primed to hear everything through a political filter. She said it's like teaching in a room full of soldiers who've been told that knowledge itself is enemy territory depending on who's presenting it. And corporations have caught on. They've learned to speak both languages fluently depending on the audience. Watch how a company's Twitter account operates versus their internal communications versus their lobbying efforts. They're not even pretending to have consistent values anymore. They're just code switching between tribal dialects to maximize profit and minimize controversy. The market research isn't about what people want. It's about which tribe is watching right now. This is what happens when binary thinking becomes the water we swim in, when complexity is seen as confusion rather than accuracy, when holding multiple truths simultaneously is viewed as intellectual weakness rather than cognitive sophistication. And the algorithms, they've learned our language. They've mastered the dialect of division. Every platform is now engineered for what researchers call engagement optimization, which is just a sanitized term for emotional manipulation. The algorithm doesn't care about truth. It doesn't care about nuance. It cares about one thing: keeping your eyes on the screen. And you know what keeps eyes on screens? Outrage, moral certainty, the dopamine hit of righteous anger. A balanced, thoughtful post that says this situation is complicated and here are 6 different perspectives to consider gets maybe 3 likes and 2 shares from your mom and that one college friend who still reads long-form articles. But a post that screams everyone who disagrees with me is literally destroying society, that goes viral, that gets shared 10,000 times, that spawns comment wars that last for days. The algorithm sees this and learns controversy equals engagement equals success. So it starts showing you more content designed to provoke, to anger, to divide. Your feed becomes a carefully curated rage engine, serving up an endless stream of the most extreme, most inflammatory takes from every corner of the discourse. And here's the truly insidious part: you don't even realize it's happening. You think you're just seeing what's out there. You think this is an accurate representation of reality, but you're actually living in a funhouse mirror where everything is distorted to maximize your emotional response. The middle ground doesn't trend. Complexity doesn't go viral. Understanding doesn't get retweets. So entire perspectives simply disappear from view. Not because they don't exist, millions of people hold them, but because they don't perform well in the attention economy. We've created an information ecosystem that systematically filters out moderation and amplifies extremism. And then we wonder why everything feels so polarized, why every conversation feels like warfare, why we can't find common ground anymore. It's not that the ground disappeared. It's that we've built a system that makes it invisible. Think about what happens when you try to step outside this, when you actually try to find that common ground. You immediately feel the system pulling you back. You share a nuanced opinion maybe, you say, I think both sides have valid points on this, and watch what happens. The algorithm doesn't know what to do with nuance. It can't categorize you, so it simply doesn't amplify you. Your post gets no traction, no engagement. It dies in the feed. Meanwhile, your friend who posted they're all corrupt. Or wake up, sheep. Their stuff is everywhere. Comments flying in. Shares multiplying. The algorithm has found its prey. So you learn. Consciously or not, you learn. If you want to be heard, you need to pick a side and scream it. Nuance is punished. Certainty is rewarded. Outrage is currency. And here's the thing, this isn't happening in a vacuum. This is shaping how we think, how we process information, how we form opinions about the world. We're not just consuming polarized content. We're being trained to think in polarized ways. Every time the algorithm rewards us for engaging with extreme content, every time it punishes us for seeking nuance, it's literally rewiring our neural pathways. The psychologists call this operant conditioning. You get a dopamine hit when you engage with outrage. You get silence when you try for balance. Over time, your brain learns. Outrage feels good, nuance feels empty. We're being trained like lab rats. Except the maze isn't made of walls, it's made of invisible algorithmic choices. And we can't even see the experimenter. Now multiply this across billions of people. Billions of brains being subtly reshaped by the same incentive structures. All of us being pushed toward the extremes, away from the center, away from each other. Is it any wonder we can't talk anymore? Is it shocking that families are fracturing over politics? That friendships are ending over Facebook posts? We're not weaker than previous generations. We're not more tribal by nature. We're just the first generation trying to maintain social cohesion while algorithms actively work against it. The technology that was supposed to connect us is tearing us apart, and it's doing it invisibly, one optimized engagement at a time. The scariest part? We're still in the experimental phase. Social media companies are running the largest uncontrolled psychology experiment in human history, and we're all unwitting participants. There's no control group, no ethical review board, no informed consent. Just billions of people having their behavior modified in real time while engineers optimize for metrics they don't fully understand. Think about what that means. Every time you open an app, you're entering a personalized behavioral modification system that's been refined through billions of interactions. It knows when you're most vulnerable. It knows what makes you angry, what makes you anxious, what keeps you scrolling, and it uses that knowledge not to help you, but to keep you engaged. I remember reading about B.F. Skinner's experiments with pigeons in the 1950s. He discovered that intermittent rewards on predictable reinforcement created the strongest behavioral conditioning. The pigeon never knew when the next food pellet would arrive, so it just kept pecking obsessively. Sound familiar? That's literally the pull-to-refresh mechanism on your phone. That's checking for likes. That's scrolling for content. We're all pigeons now, and the pellets are dopamine hits. But here's where it gets darker. Skinner's pigeons didn't know they were in an experiment. We do. We know what's happening to us. We've read the articles. We've watched the documentaries. We understand the mechanisms. And yet, we can't stop. That's not a personal failing. That's the sign of a system designed to override your conscious decision-making. The technology has evolved faster than our ability to regulate it, faster than our ability to understand it, faster than our ability to adapt to it psychologically. We're running ancient hardware brains that evolved for small tribal groups on software designed for global-scale manipulation. And the most dangerous part? We don't even realize we're obsolete. We still think our intuition works. We still trust that gut feeling when we swipe left or right, when we click buy now, when we form an opinion about someone we've never met. But that gut, it's being played like a fiddle by systems that know us better than we know ourselves. Think about the last time you made what felt like a spontaneous decision. Ordering takeout at 11 p.m. Buying something you didn't plan to buy. Staying up way too late scrolling through content that, honestly, wasn't even that good. Was that really you deciding? Or was it an algorithm that knew, based on 47,000 data points, exactly when you'd be most vulnerable, most impulsive, most likely to convert? The terrifying answer is, you'll never know for sure. Because these systems don't announce themselves. They don't pop up a notification that says, hey, we manipulated your dopamine levels and exploited your chronotype to maximize engagement. They just work silently, invisibly, constantly. This is what I mean by cognitive obsolescence. We're living in a world where our decision-making apparatus, the thing we've relied on for our entire evolutionary history, has been reverse-engineered and exploited. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night. This isn't even the final form. What we're experiencing right now in 2025 is the primitive version, the training wheels, the beta test. We're complaining about algorithms and filter bubbles and dopamine manipulation like those are the final boss, but they're not. They're level 1, because the next wave isn't just going to predict your behavior, it's going to simulate you entirely. Digital twins. AI models that don't just know what you might do, but can run thousands of versions of you through thousands of scenarios to find the exact combination of stimuli that gets you to do exactly what someone wants you to do. Imagine a corporation or a government, or anyone with resources being able to test run every possible message, every possible frame, every possible approach on a virtual you before you ever see the real thing. They'll know which version of an ad makes you pause, which headline makes you click, which fear keeps you awake, which hope makes you open your wallet. And here's the thing you won't even know you're being tested on, because the testing happened before you ever saw it. The version that reaches you has already been optimized against 1,000 simulations of your behavior. This isn't paranoia, this is just the logical endpoint of where we're already headed. Facebook already runs tens of thousands of A/B tests on its users every single day. Google tweaks search results based on microscopic variations in user response. But those are blunt instruments compared to what's coming. Those test on populations. Digital twins will test on you. Individually, personally, with surgical precision. And if you think that sounds dystopian, wait until you hear what they're planning to do with it in elections. Forget Cambridge Analytica. That was like using a sledgehammer. This is like using a scalpel that's been sharpened on a quantum whetstone. Imagine every voter having a digital twin and campaigns running millions of simulated conversations, simulated ads, simulated debates to find the exact message that flips that specific person from undecided to committed. Not messages that work on demographics. Messages that work on you. Your digital twin becomes the testing ground for your own manipulation. And the scary part? It'll feel like free will. It'll feel like you came to that conclusion yourself, because in a sense you did, or at least a simulated version of you did, in 1,000 alternate realities, until they found the one where you made the choice they wanted. We're moving from a world where privacy meant keeping your information secret, to a world where privacy will mean keeping your behavioral patterns, your psychological profile, your decision-making algorithms out of someone else's predictive models. But how do you do that when every click, every pause, every micro-expression is being harvested? The paradox is suffocating. To protect your future autonomy, you'd have to stop participating in the digital world entirely. No phone, no internet, no smart devices. But in 2025, that's not opting out, that's self-exile. You become invisible to the systems that now determine who gets loans, jobs, healthcare, opportunities. Digital absence has become its own form of suspicious data. I spoke with a woman named Elena who tried it. For 6 months she went completely offline, deleted everything, used cash, no smartphone. She told me it felt liberating at first, like finally escaping a cage she didn't know she was in. But then she tried to rent an apartment. The landlord couldn't verify her. No digital footprint meant no credit check, no background check, no proof she existed in any meaningful way. She didn't get the apartment. When she applied for jobs, HR departments ghosted her. She had no LinkedIn, no social media presence, nothing to verify her professional identity. She'd become a phantom in a world that only recognizes digital shadows. I realized, she told me, that they've made participation mandatory by making absence impossible. You're not free to leave because leaving means you cease to exist in all the ways that matter now. This is the new coercion. Not forcing you to join, but making non-participation indistinguishable from non-existence. And it gets darker. Because the people building these systems, the ones deciding what data gets collected and how it gets used, they're not elected. You didn't vote for the algorithms that determine your creditworthiness. You didn't choose the AI that decides if you're a flight risk or a health liability. These systems are being built in boardrooms and laboratories by people optimizing for engagement, profit, and efficiency. Not freedom, not dignity, not your well-being, just compliance. And here's the thing that really gets me, the thing that keeps me up at night. They've convinced us that this asterisk is asterisk freedom, that having 47 brands of cereal to choose from is liberation, that scrolling through Netflix for 30 minutes before giving up is autonomy, that picking between two political parties who both serve corporate interests is democracy. We've been given the asterisk appearance, asterisk of choice, while the actual decisions, the ones that matter, were made decades ago by people we'll never meet, in rooms we'll never enter. The choice of asterisk, how asterisk society is structured, already decided. The choice of whether endless growth on a finite planet makes sense, not up for debate. The choice of whether your labor should actually cover your basic needs. Sorry, that's just economics. You get to choose asterisk within asterisk the system, but you don't get to choose the system itself. It's like being on a train speeding toward a cliff, and they're asking whether you'd prefer a window seat or an aisle seat. Meanwhile, no one's allowed to question the destination. And the beautiful or horrifying part of all this is how asterisk voluntary asterisk it feels. Nobody's forcing you to check your email at 10 p.m. Nobody's physically preventing you from leaving your job. Nobody's holding a gun to your head making you stay in a life that's slowly killing you, but they don't need to. Because they've built a world where the voluntary choice and the survival choice are the same thing. Where saying no to the grind means saying no to healthcare, to housing, to being able to eat. Where rest is a luxury you have to earn, not a biological necessity. Where taking care of yourself is treated like laziness, and burning out is worn like a badge of honor. The cage doesn't need locks when you've convinced the prisoner that the cage asterisk is asterisk the world. When you've made them believe that wanting anything different is naive, entitled, or worse asterisk unrealistic asterisk. But here's what they don't want you to realize. It's only unrealistic because we've asterisk accepted asterisk this reality as unchangeable. 50 years ago, the idea that we'd carry devices in our pockets that could access all human knowledge seemed unrealistic. 100 years ago, the idea that we'd fly through the air in metal tubes seemed impossible. 200 years ago, the idea that slavery would be abolished, that women would vote, that workers would have weekends, all of that seemed like a fantasy. Human beings have an incredible capacity to imagine and create new realities. We've just forgotten how to imagine anything beyond asterisk this one asterisk. What we're living through right now isn't permanent. It's just the current arrangement. And every arrangement eventually gets rearranged. Think about this. In 1989, the Berlin Wall seemed like it would stand forever. It had been there for nearly 30 years. Families were split. People died trying to cross it. Political scientists wrote thick books about the permanent division of Europe. And then, in a matter of weeks, ordinary people with hammers just took it apart, piece by piece. Nobody asked permission. They just started dismantling the thing that everyone said couldn't be dismantled. That's the thing about systems that seem invincible. They're usually one collective no away from collapse. Or look at Iceland in 2008. Their entire banking system imploded. The economy was in ruins. And instead of bailing out the banks like everyone expected, the people of Iceland said, "Actually, no, we're not paying for your mistakes." They refused. They protested. They banged pots and pans outside Parliament every single day until the government fell. And you know what? They rewrote their constitution, with input from ordinary citizens, through social media. They didn't wait for permission from economists or political elites. They just did it. Now, I'm not saying revolution is easy. I'm not romanticizing it. Change is messy and complicated, and there are always unforeseen consequences. But the point is, it's possible. Systems that look permanent aren't. They're just maintained by our collective agreement to keep participating in them. And right now, more people than ever are withdrawing their agreement. They're checking out, not because they're lazy or entitled, but because the math doesn't math anymore. Because they're tired of being gaslit into thinking that their exhaustion is a personal failing rather than a rational response to an irrational system. The question isn't whether things will change. They always do. The question is, what comes next? Do we slide into something worse? Or do we build something better? Because here's the thing, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And right now, we're hearing some very familiar verses. The parallels are uncomfortable. Societies under stress don't just collapse overnight. They fragment slowly. Trust erodes. Institutions weaken. People retreat into smaller and smaller circles of certainty. And in that fragmentation, opportunists find their opening. We've seen it before. Weimar Germany didn't fall because everyone suddenly became evil. It fell because good people were exhausted, confused, overwhelmed by economic chaos and political theatre. They stopped participating. They stopped believing anything could change. And in that vacuum of engagement, extremism found fertile ground. I'm not saying we're there, but I am saying the mechanisms are similar. When people feel unheard, they get loud. When they feel unseen, they make themselves impossible to ignore. And when the system seems rigged, they start looking for anyone who promises to flip the table. The question we should be asking isn't, how did we get here? That's backwards looking. The question is, what kind of society do we actually want? Because here's what I've learned studying civilizations that survived their breaking points. They didn't survive by going backward. Rome didn't return to the Republic. Japan didn't resurrect the shogunate. They survived by adapting, by finding new forms that fit new realities. Maybe that's where we are. Not at the end, but at an awkward, painful middle. The old systems straining under new pressures. The old answers failing to address new questions. And all of us collectively trying to figure out what comes next. The optimist in me says we've been here before and found our way through. The realist says it's never guaranteed. The pragmatist says it depends entirely on what we do right now, in these small moments when history is still being written. Because that's the thing about inflection points, they're only obvious in hindsight. Right now we're living inside the question mark. And here's what makes this moment particularly strange: we're aware of it. Previous generations lived through their inflection points without necessarily knowing they were pivotal. The people watching the first printing press probably didn't think, this is going to democratize knowledge and spark the Renaissance. They thought, books just got cheaper. But we know something fundamental is shifting. We can feel it in the way conversations have changed, in how quickly new capabilities emerge, in the strange vertigo of not knowing what's hype and what's the next electricity. This awareness creates its own paradox. Are we observers or participants? Are we documenting history or making it? Maybe both. And maybe that's exactly what makes this inflection point different from all the others. Let me tell you about a conversation I had with a software engineer who's been coding for 30 years. He said something that stopped me cold. For the first time in my career, I'm not sure what skills to develop next. The landscape is changing faster than I can orient myself. This is someone who adapted through the dot-com boom, the mobile revolution, the cloud transformation. Someone who's made a career out of learning. And now he's looking at the rate of change itself and questioning whether traditional adaptation strategies still work. Because it's not just about learning new tools anymore. It's about fundamentally reconceiving what certain types of work even are. It's about watching job categories that seemed permanent start to blur and shift like chalk drawings in the rain. And here's the uncomfortable part: nobody really knows which skills will matter 5 years from now. The standard advice of learn to code or focus on creativity or develop soft skills, all of it comes with a giant asterisk because the ground beneath those recommendations keeps moving. This creates what I call strategic vertigo, that dizzy feeling when you're trying to plan for a future that's fundamentally unpredictable. Do you double down on uniquely human skills? Do you learn to work alongside AI? Do you specialize deeper or generalize wider? Every choice feels both urgent and potentially obsolete. And that paralysis, that constant second-guessing, becomes its own form of suffering. Because you're not just choosing a career path anymore. You're trying to predict which skills will survive automation, which industries won't collapse, which investments won't evaporate. You're playing chess against an opponent that rewrites the rules mid-game. The old advice feels laughably outdated. Find your passion. Okay, but what if your passion is illustration and AI can generate 1,000 variations in seconds? Get a stable government job. Sure. Until budget cuts and digital transformation eliminate your department. Buy property. With what down payment? In which market that won't crater? Every traditional pathway to security has a giant question mark hovering over it. And here's what makes it truly maddening. You can't even trust your own judgment anymore, because the world is changing faster than human pattern recognition evolved to handle. Our brains are wired to learn from experience, to recognize patterns, to apply lessons from the past. But when the past stops being a reliable predictor of the future, that entire system breaks down. You watch someone 10 years older struggle with decisions you now face, and their experience doesn't help you. The game they played doesn't exist anymore. The strategies that worked for them are irrelevant. You're essentially navigating without a map while being told that having a map is essential for success. So you turn to experts, thought leaders, gurus, and you find 1,000 conflicting voices, each absolutely certain they know the answer. Learn to code. No, coding will be automated. Learn sales. Actually, focus on emotional intelligence. Wait to become a content creator. Scratch that, the algorithm changed and nobody's making money anymore. The information overload doesn't clarify your path, it multiplies your uncertainty. And beneath all of this, beneath the career anxiety and financial stress and existential questioning, there's a deeper fear that nobody quite articulates. The fear that you're fundamentally unsuited for the world that's coming. That your particular combination of skills, interests, and temperament made sense in 2010 but is obsolete in 2025. That you're a solution to a problem that no longer exists. But here's where that narrative completely falls apart. Because while you've been watching the world accelerate, convinced you're being left behind, something else has been happening. Something quieter. Something the productivity gurus and tech evangelists don't want you to notice. The people who went all in on optimization, many of them are burning out spectacularly. The ones who rebuilt their entire identity around being digital natives. They're discovering that expertise in yesterday's tools doesn't automatically translate to tomorrow's landscape. The constant adapters, the early adopters, the people who proudly declared they were disrupting themselves. A lot of them are exhausted, hollowed out, wondering what they sacrificed in the name of staying relevant. Meanwhile, you, the person convinced they're falling behind you've been developing something far more valuable than the ability to quickly master the latest productivity app. You've been building discernment. The ability to watch a dozen trends explode and fade and to recognize the pattern. To see what's genuinely transformative and what's just noise with good marketing. You've been cultivating depth. While others were skimming across the surface of everything, optimizing for breadth over understanding, you were actually learning things thoroughly. Maybe slowly, maybe inefficiently, but in a way that creates genuine expertise rather than performative familiarity. You've been preserving your humanity. You didn't gamify your entire existence. You didn't reduce every relationship to a networking opportunity or every experience to content. You maintained connections to things that matter for reasons that have nothing to do with productivity or personal brand. And here's what nobody tells you. These qualities, discernment, depth, humanity, they're becoming more valuable, not less. In a world drowning in information, the ability to think critically is rare. In an economy of shallow expertise, deep knowledge stands out. In a culture of performance, authenticity is magnetic. The skills you think are obsolete, many of them are just undervalued in this particular moment. But moments pass. The ability to think deeply, to communicate clearly, to understand context and nuance, to see connections others miss, these don't have expiration dates. They're the foundation everything else is built on. And here's something else worth considering. The people telling you that traditional skills don't matter anymore often have those skills themselves. The tech entrepreneurs dismissing the value of writing went to schools where writing was emphasized. The influencers claiming you don't need math built their businesses on analytics and metrics. The thought leaders saying formal education is obsolete typically have multiple degrees. It's a peculiar pattern, isn't it? The people at the top of the ladder telling everyone below that ladders don't matter. Meanwhile, they're standing comfortably on rung 10, insisting you should just jump. This doesn't mean their advice is entirely wrong. Innovation often comes from questioning established systems. But there's a difference between thoughtful critique and convenient dismissal. Between building something new and simply tearing down what exists because reconstruction is harder than destruction. The smartest approach isn't choosing between old and new, traditional and modern, practical and creative. It's recognizing that these aren't opposing forces, they're complementary ones. The most successful people I've studied don't reject fundamental skills. They build on them. They use writing to clarify their thinking, math to validate their intuitions, history to avoid repeating mistakes, and then they layer modern tools and techniques on top of that foundation. Think of it like architecture. You can have the most stunning, innovative design in the world, but if the foundation is weak, the building doesn't stand. Fundamental skills are your foundation. Everything else, the specific software, the particular methodologies, the trendy frameworks, those are the upper floors. Impressive, visible, important, but ultimately dependent on what's beneath them. And here's where this gets really interesting. The more technology advances, the more valuable these fundamental human skills become. Not less valuable, more. Because as automation handles routine tasks, what remains are the uniquely human capabilities, the judgment calls, the ethical considerations, the creative leaps, the empathetic connections. A calculator makes arithmetic faster, but it doesn't make mathematical thinking obsolete. It frees you to tackle more complex problems. Spellcheck catches typos, but it doesn't replace the need for clear thinking expressed through clear writing. Translation software helps with basic communication, but it doesn't capture cultural nuance or context the way deep language understanding does. AI is no different. It's a tool that amplifies certain capabilities while demanding that we sharpen others. It can generate a first draft, but it can't replace the editorial judgment that turns raw text into compelling communication. It can analyze data patterns, but it can't replace the strategic insight that determines which questions are worth asking in the first place. It can simulate conversation, but it can't replace the emotional intelligence that builds genuine human connection. The people who will thrive aren't those who reject AI or those who blindly depend on it. They're the ones who understand its capabilities and limitations well enough to leverage it strategically while developing the uniquely human skills that AI can't replicate. Here's what that looks like in practice. Instead of spending hours on routine research, you use AI to gather and organize information quickly, then apply your critical thinking to evaluate, synthesize, and draw original conclusions. Instead of manually formatting data, you automate that process, then spend your freed up time interpreting what the data actually means for decision-making. Instead of struggling with writer's block on a blank page, you use AI to generate initial ideas, then apply your creativity, voice, and judgment to shape something genuinely valuable. The shift isn't about doing less. It's about doing more of what matters. It's about moving up the value chain from execution to strategy, from information processing to insight generation, from task completion to problem definition. And this is where the opportunity becomes visible. While some people worry that AI will take their jobs, others are already using it to become exponentially more productive, creative, and valuable. They're not competing with AI, they're collaborating with it. They're not threatened by automation, they're liberated by it to focus on higher-order work that machines can't do. The question isn't whether AI will change the job market. It already is. The question is whether you'll position yourself as someone whose skills are enhanced by AI or replaced by it. And here's what most people get wrong about positioning themselves. They think it's about learning to prompt ChatGPT better or taking a weekend course on Midjourney. Those things matter, sure, but that's like learning to use a calculator when the real skill is understanding mathematics. The people who will thrive aren't just the ones who can use AI tools. They're the ones who understand what AI fundamentally cannot do. And there's a growing list of those things that might surprise you. AI can't navigate ambiguity without clear parameters. It can't read the room in a tense meeting. It can't feel the unspoken hesitation in a client's voice that tells you the deal is about to fall apart. It can't make the intuitive leap that connects two seemingly unrelated problems. It can't care about the outcome beyond its programmed objective. I was talking to a friend who runs a design agency. She told me something that stuck with me. She said, AI can generate 100 logo variations in seconds, but it can't sit with a founder at 2 a.m. and understand why they started their company, what their grandfather taught them, why certain colors make them emotional. It can't translate that story into visual identity. That's the space where humans become invaluable. Not in the execution that can be automated, but in the translation of human experience into strategic direction. In the messy, beautiful, complicated work of understanding context that exists beyond data points. Here's another angle people miss. As AI makes certain outputs cheaper and faster, it paradoxically makes human judgment more valuable. When anyone can generate a decent blog post in 30 seconds, the ability to know which ideas are worth writing about becomes premium. When AI can compose music, the ear that recognizes emotional resonance becomes irreplaceable. Scarcity shifts, and with it, value shifts. Think about photography. When cameras became accessible to everyone, professional photographers didn't become obsolete. But the ones who survived weren't the ones with the most expensive equipment. They were the ones with vision, with the ability to see moments before they happened, to understand light, emotion, story in ways that transcended technical execution. The same transformation is happening across every industry right now. The technical execution is being democratized. The strategic thinking, the emotional intelligence, the creative vision, that's where the new scarcity lies. So when I say position yourself, I mean this: become undeniably human in your skills. Learn things machines can't replicate yet. Master persuasion. Develop taste. Cultivate judgment. Build relationships that matter, because here's what they're not telling you in those "AI will replace everyone" headlines. AI is creating more demand for deeply human skills than ever before. Think about it. As AI handles routine analysis, who becomes valuable? The person who can look at that analysis and ask the question the machine never considered. The person who can feel when the data is technically correct but strategically wrong. The person who can translate technical possibilities into human experiences. We're not entering a world where machines replace humans. We're entering a world where humans who understand machines replace humans who don't. That's the actual dividing line. And it's being drawn right now, while most people are still debating whether to be scared or excited. I'll be straight with you, both responses are outdated. Fear keeps you paralyzed. Naive excitement makes you unprepared. What you need is something different entirely, informed intentionality. You need to understand what's actually happening, see where the opportunities genuinely exist, and position yourself deliberately. That's why I'm taking the time to break this down properly. Because the window for easy positioning is closing. Right now, you can learn these tools while they're still new, while the standards are still being set, while the playbooks are still being written. You can become an expert in AI application in your specific field before that becomes the baseline expectation. But that window won't stay open forever. In 2 years, maybe 3, AI literacy will be like computer literacy, becoming not a special skill, just an assumed foundation. The people who learned it early will have built entire careers on that head start. The people who waited will be scrambling to catch up while competing with younger workers who grew up with this as normal. I'm not trying to create urgency artificially. I'm observing what always happens during technological shifts. The early adopters don't win because they're smarter. They win because they're positioned when the opportunity is still visible and accessible. And here's the part that keeps me up at night. We're not just talking about making money. We're talking about being left behind in a way that's fundamentally different from previous economic shifts. When factories automated, you could still drive a truck. When retail moved online, you could still work in logistics. But when AI can draft legal documents, write code, design graphics, analyze data, and hold customer service conversations, what's the fallback position? I'm watching people treat this like it's optional. Like AI is just another tool they'll learn about eventually, when they get around to it. That mindset worked when technology changed slowly. It doesn't work when the technology improves exponentially. 6 months in AI development now brings changes that used to take 5 years. The person who starts learning today has a 6-month advantage over the person who starts learning tomorrow. Multiply that across a year, and you're looking at someone who's essentially living in a different technological era. The practical reality is straightforward. Your competitors are already using these tools. Your colleagues are already using these tools. The person interviewing for the same job as you is already using these tools. The question isn't whether you'll eventually use AI. The question is how much ground you'll lose before you start. I'm seeing people justify waiting. They say they'll learn it when it's more mature, more stable, easier to understand. They don't realize they're using the exact same language people used about the internet in 1995, about mobile in 2008, about social media in 2010. Every single one of those people spent the next decade catching up, always one step behind, always fighting from a disadvantage they created themselves. The cost of waiting isn't just missed opportunity, it's accumulated disadvantage. Every month you delay is another month your competitors get better at using these tools. Another month the technology becomes more embedded in standard workflows. Another month the bar for basic competency rises higher. Think about someone who ignored computers until 2010. They could learn, sure, but they were competing against people who'd been building skills for 20 years. The gap wasn't just technical knowledge, it was intuition, efficiency, and the compound benefits of practice. This is what the research shows consistently. Age gives you something that youth can't manufacture: accumulated wisdom, the ability to see patterns because you've seen them before. The confidence that comes from having already solved similar problems 100 times. There's a study from MIT that tracks startup success rates. Founders in their 20s had energy and optimism, but founders in their 40s and 50s had something more valuable: they had already failed. They knew which mistakes to avoid, which partnerships to trust, which risks were calculated versus reckless. The 20-something founders had to learn these lessons in real time, burning through capital and momentum. The older founders walked in with a roadmap drawn from scar tissue and experience. Think about writing. Young writers often have raw talent and bold ideas. But seasoned writers understand structure instinctively. They know how to pace a narrative, when to withhold information, how to create tension without trying too hard. It's not that younger writers can't learn this. It's that older writers have already internalized it through thousands of hours of practice. Their first drafts are cleaner. Their revisions are more efficient. They waste less time chasing ideas that won't work because they've already chased those dead ends. This applies everywhere. The 50-year-old manager understands office dynamics that the 30-year-old MBA is still learning. The older therapist spots patterns in the first session that took them years to recognize early in their career. The experienced teacher knows which students need pressure and which need encouragement, reading the room with an accuracy that can't be taught from a textbook. Now here's where this gets really interesting. Society keeps telling us that learning becomes harder as we age. We've all heard it: the brain becomes less plastic, memory fades, new skills take longer to acquire. But here's what the research actually shows. Yes, certain types of memory decline slightly. Processing speed might slow marginally. But crystallized intelligence, your accumulated knowledge and ability to use it, that keeps growing well into your 60s and 70s. What looks like slower learning is often deeper learning. Younger people might memorize information faster, but older learners integrate new knowledge with existing frameworks more effectively. They ask better questions. They see connections that novices miss. They understand why something matters, not just what it is. I remember interviewing a woman who learned statistics at 52. She told me something I'll never forget. When I took statistics in college, it was just formulas. Now every equation tells me a story about the world. That's the difference right there. Young learners often treat knowledge as a collection of facts to memorize. Older learners treat it as a lens through which to understand reality. And here's another advantage that nobody talks about. Older learners have already failed at enough things to know that failure isn't fatal. When you're young, every mistake feels like the end of the world. You worry about looking stupid. You worry about falling behind. You worry about proving you're not good enough. But when you've lived through real setbacks, job losses, relationship endings, projects that crashed and burned, learning a language incorrectly, or stumbling through a coding tutorial just doesn't carry the same weight. You've developed what psychologists call failure tolerance. You know that confusion is temporary. You know that struggle precedes breakthrough. You know that the path to competence is always paved with incompetence first. This emotional resilience is perhaps the most underestimated advantage in all of learning. Because here's the truth. Learning anything difficult requires you to be comfortable being bad at something, and older adults are much better at being bad at things. They can laugh at their mistakes. They can ask dumb questions without their ego shattering. They can show up as beginners without needing to pretend they're anything else. Meanwhile, younger learners often sabotage themselves with performance anxiety and imposter syndrome. I've watched 20-year-olds quit learning opportunities because they couldn't bear to be the worst person in the room. And I've watched 60-year-olds thrive in those exact same situations because they genuinely didn't care about being the worst person in the room. They were too busy learning to worry about looking good while doing it. That's a superpower, and it's one that only comes with age. So when people say I'm too old to learn, what they're really saying is, I'm afraid to start. And I get it. Starting is terrifying at any age. But here's the truth: the most successful late bloomers in history were terrified too. They just didn't let fear make the decision for them. Vera Wang didn't enter fashion design until she was 40. Before that, she was a figure skater, then a journalist at Vogue. She had no formal training in design. She started because she couldn't find a wedding dress she liked for her own wedding. That frustration became the spark, and now she's a global icon. But I guarantee you that first sketch was scary. That first collection was a leap into the unknown. And that's the pattern you see over and over. Late bloomers don't start because they're fearless. They start because they finally realize that fear of regret is stronger than fear of failure. Think about it. What's scarier, trying something new at 50 and struggling for a few years, or getting to 70 and wondering what if? Most people choose the comfort of wondering. But the ones who bloom late, they choose the discomfort of doing. And here's where it gets really interesting. There's actually a term in psychology called crystallized intelligence. It's the accumulation of knowledge, skills, and experience over time. And unlike fluid intelligence, which peaks in your 20s, crystallized intelligence keeps growing as you age. This is why older people often make better decisions in complex situations. They've seen more patterns. They've lived through more scenarios. They have context that younger people simply can't have yet. So when a 55-year-old decides to write their first novel, they're not starting from zero. They're starting with 5 decades of human experience, emotional depth, and observational wisdom. That's not a disadvantage, that's a goldmine. Laura Ingalls Wilder didn't publish her first Little House book until she was 64. 64. And she went on to write one of the most beloved book series in American history. Her age wasn't the obstacle. It was the ingredient that made her stories rich, authentic, and timeless. Age gave her something no young writer could have a full life to write about. And that's the advantage nobody talks about. Late bloomers bring their whole lives into what they create. Every failure, every heartbreak, every lesson, it all becomes material. But there's a cost to mining your soul for content. There's a cost to turning your life into a narrative that millions of people consume with their morning coffee. You start to wonder, am I living my life, or am I just collecting footage? Am I having this conversation because it matters, or because it'll make a good story? That vacation with your family you present, or are you already imagining how you'll describe the sunset to your audience? The line blurs, and that's when the exhaustion really sets in. Because you're not just tired from the work, you're tired from the constant self-surveillance. You're tired from narrating your own life in real time. You're tired from the pressure to turn every moment into meaning, every experience into entertainment, every pain into poetry. And here's what nobody tells you. The audience doesn't see that labor. They see the polished final product. They see the perfect metaphor, the clever transition, the emotional crescendo. They don't see the 18 drafts. They don't see you pacing your room at 3 a.m. trying to find the right word. They don't see the moments you've replayed a painful memory so many times that it doesn't even feel real anymore, it's just content. That's the price of being prolific. That's the price of consistency. You become a content machine, and machines don't get to rest. Machines don't get writer's block. Machines don't get to say, I'm not inspired today. Machines just produce, and if you're not careful, you forget that you're not actually a machine. You're a human being with limits, with needs, with a finite supply of stories to tell. You can't keep mining the same vein forever. Eventually you hit bedrock, and when you do, you have 2 choices. You can keep digging, scraping up whatever dust remains, recycling old ideas with new packaging, or you can stop, rest, let the well refill. But stopping feels impossible when the algorithm rewards momentum, when your income depends on output, when your identity has become inseparable from your productivity. So you keep going. You tell yourself you'll rest after this project, after this launch, after you hit this milestone. The finish line keeps moving, and somewhere along the way, you stopped questioning whether you even want to reach it anymore. You're just running because stopping feels like falling. And here's the cruelest part: the system makes you complicit in your own exploitation. It convinces you that your exhaustion is a personal failing, that if you just optimized better, delegated smarter, morning routined harder, you wouldn't feel this way. The problem isn't the unsustainable pace, it's your inability to sustain it. So you download another productivity app, you try another framework, you wake up earlier thinking that's the missing piece. You're troubleshooting your humanity like it's a technical glitch, when the real issue is that you're being asked to operate like a machine in a body that needs rest, connection, and meaning beyond output. The saddest conversations I have are with creators who've built everything they thought they wanted and feel absolutely nothing. They reached the milestone. They hit the income goal. They got the recognition. And instead of satisfaction, there's just this hollow echo, because they optimized for metrics that looked like success but felt like emptiness. They spent years building an audience but have no energy left for the people who actually love them. They created financial freedom but are too burned out to enjoy it. They achieved visibility but lost sight of why they started. The destination turned out to be a mirage, and now they're standing in the desert wondering if there was ever water at all. This is what we don't talk about enough. The hidden cost of optimization isn't just exhaustion, it's the slow erosion of the parts of yourself that can't be monetized. Your curiosity gets reduced to content angles. Your experiences get filtered through, will this perform? Your relationships become networking. Your rest feels like lost revenue. You start to forget what you liked before you had to like things strategically. What you enjoyed before everything needed a purpose. Who you were before productivity became your personality. The algorithm doesn't just change what you make, it changes who you are. And here's what nobody tells you about that transformation. It's invisible until it's complete. You don't wake up one morning and decide to become someone else. It happens in micro shifts. 1,000 tiny compromises that feel like optimization. You start saying no to coffee with friends because you need to batch your social time. You stop reading books that don't have actionable takeaways. You feel guilty watching a sunset because you're not documenting it for content. You measure the worth of a conversation by whether it could become a collaboration. I watched a creator completely rebuild their personality around their content niche. They used to be this wonderfully contradictory person loved punk rock and botanical gardens, read philosophy and watched trash TV, had opinions that didn't fit neatly into any ideology. Then they found their niche, minimalist productivity, and slowly, methodically, they sanded down every edge that didn't fit the brand. The punk rock disappeared, too chaotic for the aesthetic. The trash TV became a guilty secret, not on brand. The contradictory opinions got smoothed into safe, agreeable takes that wouldn't alienate any segment of their audience. They became a perfectly optimized content machine, and somewhere in that optimization the person I knew vanished. They're more successful now, by every metric that matters to the algorithm, but when we talk there's this weird hollowness, like I'm speaking to a brand ambassador for a person who used to exist, and the thing that haunts me, they don't even see it. They think they've just become more focused, more professional, more serious about their craft. They've reframed the loss as growth, the narrowing as refinement, the disappearance as evolution. This is what the algorithm does at scale. It doesn't just change individual creators. It changes the entire texture of human expression online. It turns the messy, contradictory, gloriously weird spectrum of human personality into a collection of optimized archetypes. The relatable one, the aspirational one, the controversial one, the wholesome one. Each archetype refined through millions of interactions, a /B tested by human behavior, optimized for maximum engagement. We're not creating content anymore. We're auditioning for roles in a play written by aggregate data, and the roles keep getting narrower, more specific, more demanding. Because the algorithm doesn't want creators. It wants content formats that happen to require human performers. Think about what that means. Really sit with it. The platform doesn't need you. It needs your function. And the moment someone else can perform that function more consistently, more efficiently, more optimally, you're replaceable. That's why every niche eventually floods with creators who sound identical. They're all optimizing toward the same algorithmic ideal, all sanding down the same edges, all amplifying the same traits, all performing the same version of relatable or aspirational or controversial, and the algorithm doesn't care. It doesn't care that you're becoming a copy of a copy. It doesn't care that your voice is being flattened into something more marketable but less authentic. It just rewards what works right now at scale in aggregate. This is the part that keeps me up at night. Because I know that some of you watching this, especially those of you who are creators or want to be, you're sitting there thinking, okay, so what? If that's what works, shouldn't I just do it? Shouldn't I just play the game? And look, I get it. I really do. There's no moral superiority in staying small and authentic if your authentic voice reaches 12 people. There's no badge of honor in refusing to optimize if it means your message never gets heard. The algorithm is the only distribution mechanism we have at this scale. You either learn its language or you shout into the void. But here's what I want you to understand. When you optimize yourself for the algorithm, you're not just changing your content, you're changing yourself. You're training your brain to think in algorithmic terms, to see every experience as potential content, to evaluate every emotion based on its engagement potential, to perform your life rather than live it. I've watched creators talk about having panic attacks and in the same breath calculate whether filming it would get views. I've seen people orchestrate their own breakups for content, structure their relationships around what makes good storytelling, delay getting help for serious problems because the struggle makes better videos than the recovery. This isn't a failure of character. This is what happens when your livelihood depends on a system that rewards emotional intensity and punishes stability. When boring but healthy doesn't pay rent. When healing means your content gets less engaging.